Why shouldn't you use the dough blade for dough? Keep watching. Chances are you've been making these mistakes. So sit back and process these helpful tips. While a food processor can definitely make your kitchen life easier, every single process is contingent on using the correct setting. You could have the right blades for the intended dish and hover over your processor while it does its magic, but if the settings are all wrong, you won't get the results you want. Depending on the model of the food processor, there will usually be a pulse button, which will run short interval bursts. The low setting will run the processor at a low speed without any pauses, while the high setting will run the processor at a high speed. Per KitchenAid, the pulse setting works best for chopping or mincing, as does the chop setting should you have one on your food processor. Make sure that you only fill the bowl halfway to give the ingredients space as they are chopped. Additionally, pulsing is also good for kneading as you reincorporate flour into the rest of the dough. To slice, grate, or shred, you can simply set your processor to the low or high speed and then feed your processor through the chute while it runs. A continuous run will work for purees, so you can add ingredients in stages, though you may also have a puree setting on your food processor. Cooking up a delicious meal is a lot of fun, but after the good times end comes the tedious cleanup. If you want to keep your food processor in tip-top shape, cleaning it properly goes a long way. According to TechRadar, regardless of whether or not your food processor is safe for dishwashers, you always want to disassemble it and give the bowl and attachments a quick rinse immediately after use. If your food processor is safe for the dishwasher, check if the user manual recommends top shelf washing only and how sharp objects should be loaded. For hand washing, you especially want to make sure that you get all the little bits that may be lodged in that pesky spot where the bowl and blades attach. Another option, as Kenmore explains, is to pour warm water and soap into the bowl and turn it on to let it self-clean. Make sure it's completely dry before storing, and if you have any doubts, leave it out to air dry. Most people use their food processors and blenders interchangeably, but it's a mistake to use a blender for a food processor's job.
It's a blender.
The key difference between the two appliances is their capacity to hold liquid. While the food processor is multifunctional and works exceptionally well for dry ingredients, a blender is specifically designed to blend solid and liquid ingredients. Blenders are able to hold larger amounts of liquids, while food processors should only really hold the bare minimum liquid needed in some recipes. So while a blender will work great for your smoothies, soups, and dressings, a food processor will work best for non-liquid items like cheese, nut butters, or fresh produce. Think of it like a motorized slap chop.
Look at this. You're gonna have an exciting life now.
In fact, if you add too much liquid to your food processor, you may end up with leaks from ingredients sliding up the sides of the food processor bowl and massive flops like dry vegetables turning into pastes. Essentially, if all you're wanting is an appliance that will whip up your morning smoothies, a blender is your best bet, whereas a food processor will serve as more of a catch-all appliance for other cooking needs. It happens to the best of us. You've lovingly prepared all your ingredients, neatly packed them into the food processor bowl, and just as you go to press the start button, you notice the blades still perched on the counter. Maybe you've tried to wiggle the blades into the bowl after filling it. While softer ingredients may be a little more forgiving, hard and large ingredients like carrots and potatoes make that pretty much impossible. If it's a mistake you make a lot, just remember: base, bowl, blade. In that order. The 3 B's of food processing. Attach the food processor to its motor, secure the bowl, insert the drive adapter, and then attach your blade. When it comes to food processors, the first mistake often happens long before it has even laid claim to its designated space on your kitchen counter. While there are a wide variety of food processors on the market, you want to make sure that you're choosing the highest quality appliance for your particular needs. In the end, it all comes down to personal preference. What may be the perfect brand for one person might not check all the boxes for someone else.
It's a Cuisinart. It's a food processor.
According to Consumer Reports, in addition to the usual features you may have already considered, there are several others to mull over. These features include whether or not the food processor has a double blade, multifunction accessories, a storage case, touchpad controls, a wide feed tube, varied speed settings, and a line indicating the maximum liquid you can pour into the processor. Ultimately, the best food processors come down to what will be of use to you. You may not care for a dough blade if you never bake, but if you're going to be using it for large ingredients like potatoes, a wide feeding tube would be an asset. If you've ever thrown a couple of carrots, or any other hard ingredients, into a food processor, pressed the on button, and went shuffling around the kitchen while the processor did its thing, you'll know the result. It's usually a mix of unevenly chopped produce, with a good amount of over-processed ingredients that have been shredded to smithereens, mixed with random larger chunks. As culinary scientist Jessica Gavin noted, this is why using the food processor's pulse button and scraping down the sides of the bowl is so important. When you use a pulse and scrape combination for your ingredients, especially if you're chopping fresh produce or kneading dough, you get to control the speed. By the time you're done, you'll have more even processed ingredients.
And no longer do you have to buy the pre-packaged cheese, right? Because it's like, nobody has to do that anymore.
And as America's Test Kitchen states, if you're ever in doubt, always underprocess. You can always give underprocessed food one more pulse, but you can never unshred an onion. In addition to preparing your processor by cleaning it well and using the right steps, you want to make sure that you also prepare the actual food items you'll be processing. You know, wash it and peel it if it needs to be peeled. Round food should be cut in halves or quarters. Small ingredients can be fed into the chute either vertically or horizontally, but in layers. To slice or shred cheeses, meat, or poultry, first ensure that the ingredients are very cold, and when necessary, cut them into pieces so they will fit into the feeding chute. If you're shredding spinach or other types of flimsy leaves, stack, roll, and then stand them up in the chute. Please don't subscribe to the idea of always dumping all of your ingredients into the food processor at once. According to Cook's Info, the only time you should ever add different types of ingredients in the food processor all at the same time is if you're making a soup or a pesto. Why? Different textures will call for different levels of pulsing, so it is crucial that you add your ingredients to the processor at different times. Generally, you want to first ascertain which ingredients you want to be pureed, which you want to be finely chopped, and which ones you want to be only coarsely chopped. Once you have a good idea of this, you add the ingredients you want to be pureed to the food processor first. Give them a good pulse, and then add those you want finely chopped. Pulse and repeat until all ingredients have been added. Make sure you also consider the texture of the ingredients themselves. If some ingredients are harder than others, you'll want to make sure you adjust for that too. This may be contentious advice because why do manufacturers make dough blades if you're not supposed to use them? Well, dough blades just weren't designed for every type of dough. Per Cooks Illustrated, some food processors like Cuisinart Custom 14-Cup Food Processor recommend using the dough blade only if the recipe you're using calls for at least 3.5 cups of flour. The dough blade reportedly performs better when used for kneading dough for recipes with greater amounts of flour. However, it's purported that metal blades may actually be better at kneading dough than dough blades because the latter have shorter arms, which means they don't reach the outer parts of the bowl as well. Ultimately, if your food processor has dough blades, check the user manual for specific instructions. If none are specified, experiment with varying amounts of flour and give metal blades a try instead. If you have a dishwasher, you may be tempted to simply place the blades right in there with the rest of your food processor accessories. However, according to My Budget Recipes, you may not want to. As it turns out, even though it takes a while, regular use over time will result in wear and tear to those blades. That's also true for kitchen knives and other sharp utensils, and everybody deals with these in different ways.
Silverware up, sharp knives down.
Dishwashers can compromise the sharpness of blades because of high temperatures, harsh water spraying, and abrasive detergents. While these factors may work well for dishes with smooth surfaces like plates and glasses, blades can dull over time in those conditions. As such, you may want to avoid placing the blades in the dishwasher at all, even if you technically can clean them in the dishwasher. Anything with a high RPM motor can be prone to overheating, and food processors are no different. This is why most food processor brands have taken measurements to prevent this, per Kitchen Seer. Armed with overheat protection sensors, these products will automatically switch off if the motor suddenly has a spike in temperature. Unfortunately, if you're not aware that this is why your appliance shut off, you may register it as a glitch and switch your processor back on. This runs the risk of damaging your appliance. The next time you suspect that your processor is overheating or it shuts itself off, check the user manual to learn how long you should wait before turning it back on. If there's no way of telling, a useful practice is to unplug it and let it cool for about 20 to 30 minutes. Let's say you're getting ready to prep a meal, but you forgot to take your frozen vegetables out of the freezer. Can you still chuck them in the food processor? The answer is yes. But you probably shouldn't. According to My Budget Recipe, the bowl could get dented or cracked, the blades will almost certainly dull faster, and worse, you could risk overworking the motor. So while a food processor will chop up hard frozen foods, it's not the best practice for the longevity of your machine. Typically, if you can pierce the frozen food with a knife, you may be able to get away with using it in your food processor. If it's frozen too hard for a knife to cut, it's still too frozen for the food processor. Make a habit of leaving food in the refrigerator to thaw overnight if you want to use certain ingredients in your food processor the next day.